Right. Everyone ready? Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Theoharis. I'm a AVP of Accounts at Simpson, Scarborough. We're a full-service marketing and branding firm. We also have a digital practice where we do full-scale website redesigns. But we are focused within the higher education category. So we work exclusively with colleges and universities. That being said, our talk today, hopefully, if any folks in the room are outside the category or work just a little bit with colleges and universities, hopefully some of the learnings today will be applicable to you and your worlds regardless.
And I'm Scott Massey. I work at Pantheon. I joined Pantheon in about 2015. So I've worked in customer success, our global operations, and currently on both the innovation and the marketing team.
Great. All right, so I'm going to start off by overviewing a recent study that we just conducted as an agency, and it's actually a repeated study, so we're able to look at comparison over time. The study is called the Martech study. 171 institutions participated this year. The last time we conducted it was in 2021, so over the 4 years, it's been interesting to see some of the changes in the trends, which I'll overview a few of those today. We did focus exclusively on four-year not-for-profit institutions, and we made it a point to capture insights from some of the most senior individuals within the organization, so chief marketing officer, CTO, CIO, et cetera, or perhaps they're sort of next level number two folks. So it's really interesting because I think thinking about the comprehensive look at how institutions are investing in digital strategy, web strategy, marketing technology, and the likes. We're sort of able to capture them at a high level and see some of the changes over time. So if we fast forward 4 years from the 2021 survey, how has the website maturity changed in the last 4 years? Have we made progress? The answer is yes, kind of. And so I'll review some of that today. Maybe not as much progress as we expected. So we call it the teenage years, so we're like getting there. It's like getting through puberty a little bit. So you'll see some highlights here of the comparison from 2025 and 2021. So you'll see that strategy did go up. So from 32 to 39%, which is great. So really focusing on how do we intentionally set up a strategy, a plan for regular website optimizations over time. But still, when I look at that, that means that under half of institutions have a cohesive web strategy. So that's somewhere definitely for us to lean into. In terms of integrations, modest progress there. 36% now integrate their CRM and their CMS systems, for example. So still a long way to go. From a measurement perspective, we see a positive trend here. So monthly analytics reviews, so just truly looking at that performance on a monthly basis has gone up, but institutions are rarely assessing performance. That actually went down from 2021 to 2025, so another area to kind of unpack with institutions. Governance is definitely the most standout improvement since 2021. You'll see that marketing and communications within an institution now is owning, so accountable for the success of the website more than ever. 75% report sole ownership in that way. Also, that includes the coordination of the website governance strategy across the institution. And then, surprisingly, accessibility slipped slightly. So from 50 to 46, maintaining well-defined standards. So another area. So what we find reassuring is at least looking at this data and understanding, okay, where can we help institutions, or institutions can think about where they should focus their time and energy, and also where they're not necessarily alone. So maybe some of you in the room look at this and say, well, yeah, that reflects the state of our institution today as well. So while we see pockets of improvement, there's definitely, it reflects on the early stages of digital maturity. So we want to look a little bit more into some of these data points. I think hopefully is relevant for you all in the room. When we think about strategy, as I mentioned before, more and more institutions are really looking at this as an intentional investment. So from the top looking at how does the website perform against our business metrics. So that's great, but what we don't see as much is an alignment of a website to an overarching institution strategic plan. So thinking about the website as as a priority asset for the institution to achieve its business goals, that's an area that we really need to see some improvements. In that way, the website is almost an isolated strategy rather than something that's truly integrated within the entire university. And one reason we're seeing a decline overall is actually a lot of institutions are reporting longer gap of time between website redesigns than we saw in the past. I know there was a session earlier about the notion of website refreshes, and that's great too, the notion of continual optimizations. But we're seeing that predominantly institutions are not even making that level of investment in terms of regular planning for improving the website experience. So, and if you really think about it, over the last 5 years, so much has happened. In 2020, this feels like forever ago, but GA4 was released. It feels like it's been around forever, but that was only 2020. ChatGPT was released in 2022. Just thinking about how much has happened and evolved from a technology standpoint, this is really not frequent enough for the websites to keep up with that. Some other kind of interesting, when it comes to governance, stakeholders aren't necessarily understanding the why. Why does the website need to align to a larger institutional strategy? We are seeing an increase when it comes to unified strategy and collaboration. So folks across the organization are recognizing that they need to align to one approach rather than being a disjointed experience. Collaboration is happening, but you can only have the most sophisticated marketing stack if you have a clear governance model, and the stakeholders have to understand the why. And this is really important when I mentioned earlier that we ran the survey with senior most leaders, that for them to recognize what their role is in that cross-campus stakeholder collaboration. So strategy sets the direction, governance puts into motion, but education is where it really all sticks. So shifting a little bit to what we learned about measurement, it's no longer nice to have, it's a need to have. It's a requirement, you're gonna see why. So when it comes to analytics performance, we have 30% more institutions reviewing web analytics on a monthly basis. So that is up, which is a big increase, which is great. But it's not just about more measurement, it's about deeper measurement. So thinking about how institutions are combining web and CRM data. So it's not just about integrating the two, which we're seeing not enough schools are doing, and I'll show you more about that in a second, but culturally. So what is that relationship between marketing communications, who now owns the website, with your enrollment peers? Where is our opportunity to say, where does all the data live, and how can we integrate it to tell a cohesive story and a proactive story using the data? And then in addition to that, thinking about, are we tracking the right thing? So I think most institutions now are kind of tracking like the big KPIs, but thinking about where there's other places for us to capture data to tell a really comprehensive journey story. So that's where we call out something like this. We think about events. So for example, program comparison. How are we tracking behavior on the website? Let's say, seeing a prospective student comparing multiple programs. We're not just taking that data from a user experience perspective, we're also taking it to tell us, give us an insight into how prospects might be shopping, how they might be comparing products, what that might need to tell us to inform the academic side of the house in terms of positioning certain programs, and maybe what that might even tell us about program development. So thinking about how we can pull data points like this forward and help use that to educate and get further buy-in from our stakeholders. I mentioned this before, but I think something that's kind of struck us in many ways is that we're still waiting on the CRM and CMS to be integrated. Back in 2019, institutions said that the integration was in the works. In 2021, they didn't do it. In 2025, most institutions haven't done it yet. So it's just truly, it's somewhere that they're still running into hurdles. And a lot of that, again, goes back to the kind of relationships at that senior most level. And without this, you can't personalize effectively. Here are a couple of examples of when this provides a lot of value. When a student requests info on the website, enriching that lead with metadata like time spent on the site and number of pages views. A lot of this can really help those frontline enrollment folks better understanding their users. And this ultimately helps achieve and lift those business goals. So I'm going to land here with an overview of the maturity model that Simpson Scarborough has developed, in part due to the inputs we received from the survey, as well as a scorecard that we've developed. So this model is based on 54 metrics across 9 categories. You'll see the categories here on your left. Here's a QR code too. You can quickly scan it if you want to score your institution. Just fill out a form. You can see that there. So I'll let you folks do that. I'll sit on the slide for a little bit. But you'll see that we developed a list of kind of baseline must-haves against these different categories. I would say that this is really a scorecard based on infrastructure and the baseline foundation we have set up in our institution to be successful in the EDU web strategy space. So this doesn't necessarily tell you, does your website achieve the goals you set to it, but at least you know that you have it set up in a place where you can measure that level of performance. And I thought we would give you an overview for the folks that have filled out this survey so far, where the breakdown is for institutions. So on the left, that's sort of the most elementary, and the fourth is the most sophisticated. And actually, I'm just going to put them all here. You'll see that the majority of institutions fall in this level 2 bracket. So they might have some governments, maybe they're making sure their site is aligned to their brand content strategy, their IA navigation is in a place where they're constantly testing it and optimizing it, but they are really not, moving towards this great or excellent rating, that's where you'll see things like performance, accessibility, and measurement being in really good shape. When it comes to SEO, they're actively implementing strategies for that and optimizing against it. So there's definitely a lot to go, but hopefully this gives you an idea for your own institution where you might rank, and you can use this data with your stakeholders, with your leadership to help figure out where to invest next. And so Scott's going to actually bring some of these levels to life with some examples as well.
Yeah. Before I do that, who's in higher ed here? Are you all, I assume, in the top 5? That's all you. That represents this room. Cool. So yeah, I wanted to kind of continue the thread with heavy emphasis on measurement and towards steps in building a strategy, a Martech strategy. And for context, like Pantheon does hosting. We also manage workflows, and the way I like to think of it is we're really intimately involved in how teams work together. And part of that is being able to assess at what level they're at and what their needs are. And so we think about that a lot. We run hundreds of universities, they have thousands of sites, and then outside of EDU and higher ed, we have hundreds of thousands of other sites on there. So like my goal is to basically, or our goal is to take what we learn from customers that are doing this successfully and either build it into our platform as a best practice or tell you about it at EvolveDrupal. But I think what I've learned on both sides, like trying to be in a tech company and also have customers, is that like best practices are kind of useless and hand wavy without some way to measure that and some way to enable that. So that's kind of what we want to talk about next. So one of the reasons that I like the maturity model that Vanessa and team have built is that it's almost like a balanced scorecard of how you can measure yourself. And I think like people in EDU might appreciate balanced scorecards more than most. I'm a fan of balanced scorecards. But they give you an opportunity to look at a bunch of different metrics, customize the ones, weight them accordingly, and sort of build your strategy based on that. And we do that too. Like at Pantheon, one of the ways that we talk and kind of assess where customers are at is based on like this pyramid here. Contrary to popular belief, organizations don't look at their calendar and say like, we don't have anything booked really for 3 months, let's migrate our hosting. So that usually doesn't happen. Usually what happens is something is on fire and they need to get it under control. Like things are in a bad state and they come to us to kind of correct it. That's usually where we place them here. Like their website or their stack is hurting their credibility. Once we fix that, usually the next goal in a strategy is to create enough space to where you can collaborate and iterate. And we see some teams that have that under control, and they just need more environments, or they want to try new things, and that sort of those sort of motions. If those two are in place, then you get to the fun stuff, which is really focusing on results. And if you have a good strategy, I really believe that your ideas should become better. Like, if you have the right tools in place, if you have the right website, marketing stack, internal resources, philosophy, then you create a space where you can create. Less switching costs, less thinking about the tech, and more kind of creating stuff. So that's kind of what we try and offer people, like this foundational platform. And I think this is shared between what we do and what we call web operations, and what Martech, the ultimate goal of marketing technology, is to create this foundational platform where you can create the space to iterate and collaborate together, to build better ideas than you could have by themselves, and be able to measure them. Here's a couple examples of how this is done in higher ed. Like I said, we work with a bunch of different schools. They've all evolved since we did these case studies, but Ohio State came to us, and their main pain point was at the gold level, where they had servers going down, it was hurting their credibility, and they needed to get that fixed. They've evolved since then, but that's where they started. We work with Stanford, we have for over a decade, and when we did this case study, it was really more about building a testing framework where they could try new things and build new stuff, try and be a little bit more experimental, and they needed a place to do that. The point is not that I'm selling you on the fact that we do that. I think the gist that I'm trying to get across is, like, don't start here if you're still trying to put out fires, With those two in place, like the great quote from Princeton is, like, their web team operates like a branding agency within the organization. Like, they could focus on bigger ideas that they can spread throughout the organization that kind of help the whole organization be more successful, whether it's through enrollment or through, getting their messages from different departments out, and being able to grow the university through their marketing strategy. Outside of EDU, it really is a different story. Like the really deep integration with CRM and personalization and things like that really are happening outside of EDU. And I think that that's something that, as we go into this sort of really new era with AI and things like that, it's really important to kind of start, for EDU to start thinking beyond that and think about what options you have, because there are ways to personalize in Drupal without doing a whole lot of data collection that can happen in the browser. There are really different ways to use technology, and with AI, I think that is really nothing but like a multiplier to be able to do that. Because I do think that with less people coming to websites now, knowing the customer journey and being able to personalize, not at the persona level, but almost down to like the personal level, is going to be really important to successful web strategies. So to kind of summarize, this is maybe the most loaded step 0 in the world. Start with consensus on your unique value prop. Like, what does your university offer? Like, that's different than other people. And like consensus, that might take, I don't know, for a university a week or two to get, but but beyond that, because it is built on the mission, but it's more than the mission. So you set that first before you get started, and then you begin to measure it. You can't improve what you can't measure. It's something that I believe in. The balanced approach, I think, is good. Having been in tech support, if you say, I want to, if you put like, I want to solve support calls in 10 minutes and you set that as a KPI, then your support starts to look like, hey, what's your problem? Okay, reboot and call me back, and that's what develops. You develop those anti-patterns. So like having a balanced scorecard kind of makes you accountable for the results, not the individual KPIs in the process. Like with the maturity model that we talked about, like you saw how some of the schools focused on performance or focused on governance, and I think that this maturity model works really well for that. You don't have to excel at all of them. I'm sure you've done that already, but you don't have to excel at all of the factors. You have to pick the ones that are most crucial for the next year or two, or the most crucial to your imminent success, and focus on those and try and improve those. I think the biggest challenge, especially for bigger institutions, like those changes in the charts, like they may seem like small, like 5%, but for a big organization, 5% is pretty huge. Like to get a behemoth of a university moving or changing in a single direction can be hard. But I think that developing like the mentality, it starts with the people first, and build the process around this idea of experimentation, which with Drupal, with Martech, with API-based tools, should be much easier. Like it should be possible with the right mentality in place to try ChatGPT. If that doesn't work, pull it out, try Claude, build around that, and build this mentality around trying new stuff. And then finally, connect it all. Like the tools don't matter if they don't get to the right people with the right message at the right time. So it's like fundamental marketing. But with Martech, you have budgets and you have things, you have timelines, you have resources, you have implementation. So I think it's really about kind of starting small, building the stack small that conveys your value proposition, and really knowing your people through like the customer journey mapping. And then once you've done that, really start to drill into like the personalization and the options and the levers that you have. So that's it. Like, do we have any time?
Yeah, we could probably take a couple of questions we can land on. This is the QR code I mentioned before too, in case folks need to scan it again. Any questions?
Can you go back to the slide of your
Of the categories?
Yeah.
Oh, the triangle?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. This one?
No, yours.
You don't like my slides?
I love your slide.
This one? Oh my gosh.
There.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, the categories. So these are the same categories that are on this list right there,
Okay.
on the left. And we kind of broke out some of the metrics that we used for that too.
Are these the numbers for a specific institution?
No, so these are the number of metrics for each of the categories. So there was 8 metrics related to governance. So you can see how we weighted it in that way. Brand, IA and NAV, and then the measurement as well. Those are some of the biggest impact on those levers. And I mean, and to Scott's point, it's like you're kind of picking and choosing where you're going to put your time and energy. And you can use this as sort of a plan, the kind of report moving forward is where you want to put most of your investment.
So this was question, go ahead.
Noel.
I was going to say, do either of you have any thoughts about when perhaps when the Marcom team at an institution has to shop up what they think what they know the best priorities are to leadership who maybe think that there's other priorities?
Yeah, that's kind of what we were trying to get at with the weighting system of this, is to help schools say, okay, like in order to improve our score, this is at least our philosophy, is putting time and energy into some of those areas helps you improve your score, and we see that as a broader, impact of the investment. But certainly there's also has to be some education around why that is. So thinking about, again, like, where you're pulling your leadership or your stakeholders under the tent, and maybe spending a little bit more time with them on the impacts of not having a good governance strategy that's integrated and cohesive. So that's always our approach to that. I think you had a question over here. I know we're
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
If you have any questions, come see us.
Yes,
in the
come
hall.
see us.
We'll be around. Thanks.
Thank you for coming.